if you came in as your customer, do you feel that you're getting play value or do you feel that you'd be ripped off?
Hi, I'm Russ, and this is the Memory Makers Podcast, the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memory. Memory Makers Podcast. We're doing a news flash today because we are joined by none other than Brittany Betti from Betson Enterprises, soon to be Brittany Betti Sarasso. So congratulations on the upcoming nuptials. That's going to be very exciting.
Thank you very much, Russ. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Well, we also appreciate you taking some time to record this podcast leading up to your wedding in just a few days. So I promise this will be an action-packed one, and we'll get right into it. We want to focus on refreshing the arcade and reviewing earning reports. How do we become better operators within that ecosystem? And I'm so excited to have you just because you've seen a fair number of arcades in your day and have the street cred to be able to give us a lot of great insights. So I'm excited to dive in. Right off the bat, you know, one of the big things that when we talk with folks that are either coming into the business or are newer, that haven't consistently refreshed their arcade, what are some of the biggest advantages and reasons to consistently refreshing what that arcade experience is? And doesn't always mean throwing the baby out with the bathwater and we're doing a whole new room?
Yeah. So contrary to popular belief, you know, when your distributor or sales rep is trying to get you to refresh your arcade, it's not necessarily just a sales pitch. It's actually to benefit these locations. Prime example was, if you look at during COVID, a lot of the arcades that actually had a hard time were the ones that did not keep up with refreshing their business. Hence why a lot of the used equipment you saw out in the market at that time was actually not ones that people were really looking for. So that being said, refreshing your arcade, like anything, looks get stale. So even moving your game room around once a year is kind of nice, kind of like when you shift your living room around a little bit, it feels totally different.
Yeah.
So it'll make your guests think you got new games. But anyway, so in the first year you're open, you're probably not going to be trading any games in per se. You'll just be adding to your facility because, as we know, it's like you drive a car off the lot. You don't want to trade that in the first year. There's no value to it. You actually probably lose money if you do it that way. But in your second year of being open, third year, 10 to 20% refresh of your initial investment is usually a good rule of thumb. But when doing that refresh, the important part is not to always look at what the latest and greatest that's out there is. Point being is, you might have a what's it called? You might have a game room mix that, let's say, you're lacking on self-merchandisers, or you don't have enough video for your crowd, right? So if you keep buying the latest and greatest, all of a sudden you either have too much redemption, too many cranes, too many video. So making sure that you're actually taking a look at your reporting and seeing, what your game mix currently is, and then also looking at the earnings of each individual game. Because to your point, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, there's a lot of clients that I've been to where they'll go, oh, get rid of this game. I never see anyone playing it. It doesn't make any money. Right. And then you run their report and it's like number 4 in the game.
I was going to say, yeah, dude, this is one of your heavy hitters. Yeah.
Exactly. So, the initial thought is, well, Mr. Customer, I'm pretty sure you don't stand there 24/7 waiting to see who plays your game.
Yeah.
So making sure you're doing a real run through of your revenue report to do this refresh. So refreshing your game room, it just, hopefully you've got a lot of repeat customers. It's to keep them from, not getting bored with what you have, showing that you are reinvesting in your facility. I mean, we all like, it's like, who wants to go to that old hotel room where the hotel hasn't upgraded their rooms in God knows how long? Or,
right. Well,
you know,
it doesn't feel new, or it doesn't feel it just is easier for people to kind of have their blinders on if nothing's looking different. And to your point, like I always tell folks, hey, you ever get a new cover for your cell phone and feel like you got a fancy new phone, like you can do some of these things to reposition games, bring things up, and sometimes that will help improve like your earnings report. And we'll get into some of the reports analytics as well, but like some of it is just keeping it fresh so that way it's something new. It's very, straightforward retail science and thought mentality of, changing out end caps and new front displays and things like that. So it's taking a lot of proven entities that we see in other types of verticals and doing that. Yep. But, and one thing on the refresh, because I think also, some operators as they're getting into that maybe are fearful, like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to lay out 10 to 20% more, every year. Well, some of that, in our conversations that we've had, some of that are going to be, hey, we're going to trade some of these games back in. We're going to sell others on a secondary market. And then, we'll augment what that net, overall spend actually is.
Of course, yeah. So that's absolutely right. I mean, your trade-ins, which brings up another point, having a refresh. If you hold on to equipment for too long, eventually it's so old, nobody even wants to trade it in.
Sure.
There's the theory of, well, this game's paid off, so, what's the point of getting rid of it? Whatever I make is pure cash. Well, I'm pretty sure we've all seen, some of those games that have been on the floor and, they're from God knows how many years ago. And yeah, Mr. Customer, your game's paid off, but did you realize that this game has, 3 or 4 card readers on it that cost you about maybe $1,200 just for the card readers? Mm-hmm. And this game's maybe making you $1,000 in a year.
Right.
So, point being, it's yeah, you might have to dish out some cost for the refresh, but if things are going in the right way, whether you lease it, finance it, that's why I like using, despite interest rates, leasing and financing is a great way to go at it. Sure. Because you're not totally in the red from the start. You make your monthly payments and the game should be paying for itself, and you should still be making a profit on a monthly basis. So it's important to look at it that way versus just the cash that you're dishing out, like, oh, I'm going to constantly be owing money if I'm continually refreshing my game room.
Yeah, so it's not a huge cash flow bind. It's not a bit, you've got some mechanisms to be able to supplement what that overall cost is going to be. And that's where I think the folks that find it easier to refresh are using those knobs and levers, across those different pieces in order to keep that fresh. Starting to segue into a little bit, you had mentioned, hey, you don't always want to be going to the latest and greatest because you may just be getting too heavy in one direction or another. When you start to look at the reports, and see that, you may start to see, hey, these games are doing really, really well. Is that telling us that this is an underserved piece because the demand is so high? Like, should we look to add a couple more in this family or in this style of game, or should we add another just unit of that racer or whatever it is? How should folks be looking at their earning reports? And is it always the stuff at the bottom of the earning report that gets the skinny? Like, if you were going to refresh 10 to 20% of the room, is that always the bottom earners and like that's the short piece? Or does that lead us down the path of, okay, well, it could be one thing where you see, gosh, all of our lowest earning pieces are this type of a game or this focus of a piece. So maybe we don't have the audience for that we need to be shifting into new ones. What does that start to look like?
Yeah, so there's a couple things to look at, right? So first of all, you have like your staple pieces in a facility, right? Everybody walks into an arcade, they expect to see things like air hockey, skee balls, basketballs, your driving games, right? Like driving games are a staple. They haven't always been the, top earner in the game room. They do earn a good amount of money, but they haven't always been a top earner. But why are they a staple? Because, everybody looks for those. They create competition, and the earnings are a little bit lower on them just surely because, the play time is longer, right? So you get less swipes per minute, even on a busy day. But so stuff like that, you're going to keep around for a long time. You're going to run it into the ground, because they're not changing too much. Right. The only time things really changed dramatically is kind of, almost around the same time that like people stopped doing tickets in their arcades, right? You have more games that have the beautiful LED lighting and make them flashy. So even upgrading your games, like people have old skee balls, old ice balls that don't have that LED lighting. And I've
And they look
taken a
super
location
dated.
with, you
Yeah.
know, three old ice balls and switched them to two new ones, and the two new ones did just as much as the three old ones because they were just flashier and nicer.
Right.
So to that point, customers like, the newer looking stuff. I mean,
Sure.
as we all do, the shiny penny, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's like going from, hey, I'm still rocking my iPhone 11, I'm not upgrading it every single year, but every, 5 years or 4 years, I am going to, jump to that because you want something that's going to speak more or just have more curb appeal competition based on the other new pieces that you have in there. And things can look dated quickly with just how razzle dazzly and sexy that the new games look.
Exactly. So you're going to have games like that. You're going to run into the ground. And so those are the types of games that you're probably going to, refresh really only when they start to look more like dilapidated or become maintenance problems. I did mention like drivers being a staple, things like that. Video, you're probably going to switch a lot more frequently because just the different scenes and stuff that people can play. They get tired or they perfect it. And so now they want a little bit more challenge.
Is that also because of the amount of just like IP tied with the video games specifically? Like you've got plenty of other skee ball, all of those kinds of things, but because the video game, whether it's Terminator or it's a major franchise based piece, like, is it just trying to stay current with something like, hey, we've got this game, but there hasn't been a Terminator game that's come out in 10 years. Like, is that the earnings say we should keep it in? Okay, great. But hey, here's this new game, similar functionality, but newer IP that you may be seeing an increase in your spend just because it has something more relevant.
Sometimes a newer IP is surely just, is the answer to increasing your revenue. It's just something new and exciting, right? We all know that as you go through the various different arcades that are out there, there's definitely a lot of similarities. So if you're seeing, the same driver everywhere and suddenly your arcade has the latest and greatest, people are going to maybe get more excited about it. Like we introduced motion drivers in the last few years and virtual reality drivers, and those showed revenue that we haven't seen before on driving games, right?
Yeah. Well, I think about like, you see something like Jurassic Park, right, where it's been a top earner even before the new trilogies, new movies and stuff came out. Like 15 years later, that thing was still a banger. And then you come out with something like Kong that takes, hey, we like what the Rabbids kind of functionality is with a VR overlay, but we can also keep a core, performing model that we've seen on something like the Jurassic Park and tie it in with the new IP of the Kong that starts to really, scratch that itch if folks are looking for something more high fidelity like a VR experience, but don't want to put in a full VR attraction.
Exactly. And then to your point too, also when it comes to, do you just throw out, or trade in, if you will, the lowest performer in your different categories? I wouldn't say so all the time, because the other point is, taking a look at your revenue reports, and a lot of your distributors out there will be willing to help walk you through on what to look for. But I've seen games that are performing, they're the lowest in the room out of the redemption category. And it's surely just because the programming is wrong. They've either got it priced wrong or they're not paying out enough tickets. It's the same theory we always say all the time, right? Winners create players. So if you've got a redemption game that's not paying out, that you haven't realized maybe there's something wrong with, the ticket payout or whatnot, then, it's definitely going to go to the bottom. It's also location in your room. I mean, we've got pushers, right? That we see a lot of parents playing, right? They set up a chair, they sit in front of it, and it's almost like the slot machine syndrome.
Yeah, I was going to say some Wizard of Oz junkies out there for sure.
Exactly. So then you'll find a lot of parents sitting there, but if your pusher is kind of facing the wall and their kids are behind them playing the whole time, they're not going to sit there and keep cranking money into your pusher because they can't see. It's, the whole line of sight theory with the arcade room. So I've definitely had instances where we did something as simple as move the location of a game, and it went from the bottom of the room to the top 5 performers just simply moving the location, which is crazy. So you're not always going to throw it out that way. You do have to look at the different variables that play into why your game is performing the way it is.
Gotcha. When you are looking for that, and you guys obviously have the benefit of, hey, this game seems to not be doing as well. Is this just not the right fit for the game? Do I have it in the wrong place? What have you? You guys have the benefit of also, I mean, with hundreds and thousands of locations, you are then also saying, oh, okay, yeah, you've got this over here. Most of the time we see this, like if you move it over here, or if you group these kinds of things together, like we're starting, your team has the benefit of being able to help open up a larger data size and make intuitive and educated decisions around stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. We typically, when we're laying out a game room, we like to test everything before we start getting behind something, right?
Sure.
Because any manufacturer of anything is going to tell you their item is the best of the best, right? But until you actually put it in a scenario where we can test it with our customers and see it's tried and true, and we're like, hey, this game works out great in bowling centers, it doesn't work out so well in laser tag facilities.
Sure.
Sometimes it's just as simple as like your demographic is just not into that piece, right?
Sure.
So that's another thing that we look at, but hopefully we've picked up on that within, the first couple of months of you getting that arcade.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some other baseline numbers or what key performance indicators that operators should be looking at on their earning reports, and whether that's some of those may be on a weekly basis, some of those may be on a quarterly or annual basis? What are some of those, hey, if these are the good kind of 101 numbers to look at, but then as we're leveling up, here's some of the deeper, numbers or correlations that we should maybe take a look at?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So you definitely want to look at your price per play, right? Are you in line with the market? Contrary to popular belief, people do talk online and say like, hey, this game, we had, for example, when Halo first came out, you had some people were charging $3, some people were charging $2, and national average was $2. So actually people would talk about it and be like, hey, don't go play this at this location, they're charging $3, go over here and
gotcha.
$2. Because some of these games out there, especially certain IPs, have cult followings, right?
Yeah.
So people talk about your price per play, making sure you're in line, you're staying competitive, making sure that your ticket payout is correct. So, not to get too much into the weeds, but based on the type of gameplay is, how much tickets you should be expecting to pay out to your customers on average. So to create that whole, winners create players.
Sure.
Are your merchandisers stocked with the right product? Maybe your crane was doing really well a couple weeks ago. You recently changed the product that you're putting in there, and suddenly the earnings have dropped.
Gotcha.
So those are things to look at. And then also looking at, are you doing time play? Are you doing any bonus play to increase people's, average spend in your arcade? But then on the other side, it's not just the arcade. You got to look at your redemption counter too. Is your redemption counter, filled to the max? Does it look good? Do you have good product in there? Because you can have the best arcade and the worst redemption counter, or vice versa. They have to play off of each other. So there's very much a lot to look into there. And then last but not least, I think it's important to make sure you're offering value play to your customers as well. If your game room on average is maybe like $1.25 per game, it's important to have a couple of games out there, maybe like your skee balls or basketballs, where you're only charging maybe 75 cents per play, so that your customers feel, when they can't spend a lot or they only have $3 left on their card, they can get a little bit of value by playing a lower price game.
Which may not translate to that being one of your top earners, but it's going to be a good, steady, consistent catch-all for what some of that balance is. You had mentioned, payout rate being, off balance with that. Is there an example that comes to mind, whether it's a specific game or something where a customer says, they're not sure what's going on. You do determine that it's a payout issue. How do you start to identify that is one of those, the contributing factors that needs to be adjusted?
So there's some of these games, like the easiest game to talk about would be, for example, like a big bass wheel, which,
Sure.
99.999% of our arcades out there have one of those.
It wears the crown.
Yeah.
Like for the last 15 years.
It has some serious legs. That's
holy
for sure.
moly. Yeah.
But that being said, that particular piece in itself, amongst a couple other pieces that are out there that are also great earners, such as Whack and Win, you order that game based on price per play. So, if I was your sales rep, I am telling the manufacturer, this customer intends on charging $1 per play.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with inflation going on, you're seeing a lot of people increasing prices, but they forget that they also have to adjust their payouts, which will then it'll change what people feel the value is that they're getting out of their arcades. So for example, if I ordered you a $1 wheel and you started paying, let's say, charging $1.50, when your big bass wheel, on average, when you have the right wheel and the right price per play, it's going to pay out almost like clockwork, 32% on average. So then you change it to $1.50, you'll see that it's about 16% payout.
Gotcha.
So that's when you can easily look at it and go, I would look at that report and go, okay, well, clearly you have a $1 wheel. You need to lower your price, or you need to get a new wheel pattern. So it's the payout stuff is kind of funny. It's a bit of a math game in some essence, like, do I triple my payout because it's too low, or maybe your price is too high, so lowering the price will double the payout,
Right.
So there's a lot of things to look at. But it's definitely, again, it's play value that people feel like they're getting what they pay for. So a big bass wheel is high at 32% because all I get to do is spin the wheel, call it a day. A basketball is closer to 15% payout because there's play value. Like, I almost would play that game without getting paid tickets and still be satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. Well, and to your point, even of, you may increase the price but not the payout, and so now that performance is going to go down. When I'm just thinking through the ripple effects of what you have to be cognizant of, hey, is it aligning well with your redemption as well? Because those are such a critical peanut butter cup kind of functionality that those two get together is, hey, cost of inflation, our cost of goods are up, so we've raised what the ticket values are required for this, and we've raised the price for what the actual per play is. But if we didn't adjust the payout, now you're really, taking it on the shins from both angles.
Yeah, so you end up hurting yourself in some respects because people start to see the value of their play has gone down. They notice it. There's plenty of people out there who maybe are newer to their arcade, and they think, oh, who's going to notice if they're getting 5 tickets or 10 tickets? Believe me, the same way we notice if a slot machine's not paying out in a casino, they notice if an arcade is not paying out.
Big time. Okay, yeah, that's fantastic. I was curious, we talked a little bit about Wizard of Oz, obviously things like those pushers, or some of the more, games like the Minecraft where you're getting the collectibles and things like that go into it. And we've also seen, things like the giant cranes or the, just the bigger footprint pieces that are really helping make more presence pieces, out of the arcade. Those have been some pretty steady trends up and to the right over the last 5 years. Are you seeing some new trends that are something worth keeping an eye on? Hey, it may be good for some early adopters, and we're excited about what we're seeing with that. What are some of the things going on within the arcade space trend-wise that get you jazzed up?
It's interesting, right? Because like you mentioned, the size of the arcades have gotten bigger and bigger. I mean, like you said, Russell, we were talking about, even just 5 years ago, I'd say, 60 to 65
68 square feet
game,
yeah.
Right? Now we're getting closer to 75, right?
Yeah.
And part of the appeal there, right, is some of these games that are big, I consider them more of an attraction than I really do.
Very much so,
right?
Yeah, almost like a hybrid, type of an approach.
Yeah. So that being said, part of it is, right, we're always trying to get somebody out of the house, right? How do I get you off your Xbox when you can play the same game on Xbox? Well, for example, Halo did it by coming up, they had that giant 4-seater one that, I mean, God, when I sit in that thing, I feel like I'm in a home theater.
Yeah.
And, it gave gameplay that Microsoft even announced, hey, I'm not coming out with the next version for Xbox. This is the next version. Now get your butts to the arcade, right?
Right on. Yeah.
So, the attraction side of it all is kind of why, I feel like they're kind of sticking with the larger footprint, also because you're getting more and more people investing in these, box store type locations. So
Mm-hmm.
if the game's too small, it's going to get lost in your giant 50 plus piece arcade room, right?
Big time.
But then on the other side, on the flip side, some of these smaller footprint arcade games I'm seeing are starting to, pull up in the lead here, because, we're learning a lot that a lot of it is, really it's gameplay. It's how you're retailing your self-merchandiser machines, because, a crane, you should treat that like your retail store. So, you can have the greatest crane out there. If you have terrible product in it, people don't want to, pay to play to win some flimsy toy that they could care less about.
It's super similar to like even on the redemption side, right? I mean, it was over the last few years where you start having more things like air fryers and premium pieces, like do that within the merchandisers as well. Because if it looks like the quarter thing that you crank on your way out of the grocery store and you're getting the, cheapo plastic ring or something like that that's going to be broken in 2 days, like that's the piece where, some folks are doing tradables and collectibles and, high end, shoes. Like there's just people have done crazy cool stuff with those where I love the outside the box thinking that some folks are doing with that, with like some handbags or some high pieces. If we know, hey, we want to attract young professional females, that's our market. Great. We're going to have some, Lululemon and some awesome stuff that's in there to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's really the trend, right? When you ask me, a trend that I think that's picking up is, people are really investing more on, okay, the same titles are really out there. There's different versions of this and that, but how do I take that title in my arcade and how do I make it a different experience? Or how do I get people to, when I've got a duck catcher that's winner every time, how do I get someone to keep playing because they win a duck every time? Something as simple as that. I've seen people where it's, hey, win 12 different ducks, bring them up to the redemption counter, and we'll give you, a big plush duck, right? So
yeah,
it's a
trade them up
for everybody, right?
For sure.
You get the ducks back, you give them the plush, you get them to play more. I've seen people take, like when Pokemon Go is popular, they turn their duck catchers into Pokemon catchers,
Yeah.
So taking advantage of and being creative of what is the current fads out there. You don't always necessarily have to reinvest in a new game, but just add like a rebranding to it, if you will, and get creative. Like I've seen guys at the Jersey Shore, they'll take a Wizard of Oz and they'll put the ruby red slippers in there, and they'll take Willy Wonka and they'll put decorative candy in there. Just like make it appealing and fun to everybody. Sometimes it's not, just the prizes you win. It's, how you attract them into playing the games.
Well, and those, and we talked about it at the beginning as well, but like that type of an example or examples, as well as relocating a game versus just trading it out, like those are such mission critical things because that allows you to increase revenue without increasing what your actual costs are. Like if you're going down and getting some Louis Vuitton handbags, like yes, that's going to be a higher increase, but changing from a catch a duck to a catch a Pokemon or things like that, like you can make some lateral moves that just make the experience or that game more relevant without having to dramatically increase any of your cost associated with it. I love that.
And I encourage people, to tour other FECs when they have, maybe when they're in their slow season. I think some of the guys at the seasonal locations tend to almost be the best at it because in their off seasons, they're traveling the country trying to see what everybody's doing and then bring it all into one place. So definitely
get you a little tax write-off in Pigeon Forge and Wisconsin Dells when you're there, is check out some of those seasonal cats that are really tearing it up.
Like take pictures. We can't know everything that is popular in Redemption right now, even, right? Like avocados with faces and picket balls and all this, there's so many things out there, but to know what's popular and to even know that it exists, we all rely on our sales reps to kind of keep us abreast of things. But,
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, we can't be there to let you know everything that's out there. We all get busy.
Well, it can change so fast, and you look at like, oh, hey, this is the newest TikTok video that's, hitting it up, and like, do we have an opportunity to take advantage of something like that, or can we incorporate something along those lines? But like, that may be for a week and a half before it dies down. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of that push and pull of where do we try to time it, find something that's not just a flash in the pan, or if we are making some changes, is it tied with big movie releases, other things like when the Mario movie came out and having a lot more Mario stuff, but I'm going to buy a larger order of this and go through it in a shorter amount of time. I'm not just dramatically increasing my overall Mario stuff because that's more expensive over time with that IP. Lastly, as we're kind of getting to a good stopping point here, you always encourage clients to consistently walk their venue and view that as if they are their customer. And from that point of view, what, as they're doing that, should they be on the lookout for and keeping an eye on or doing as a result of those walkthroughs?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. I mean, so when you're walking through as your customer, we, first of all, as an owner, sometimes we lose sight. We're just trying to figure out how to make that extra penny, that extra dollar. But then there's simple things that, don't even have to do necessarily with like, did I reinvest in my arcade this year? Look at, all of your, for example, I'll start with the arcade, look at how you're upselling, right? Are you upselling? Are you offering me more to spend more? If you came in as your customer, do you feel that you're getting play value, or do you feel that you'd be ripped off? So definitely look at that. Look at, would I want to play in this arcade? Again, with, is the redemption counter appealing to me? Are there prizes I want to play? Are the games the latest and greatest? Is it clean? Right? We talk about this all the time, your bathrooms, right? Like,
big time. Yep.
This seems to be such a popular thing, right? Because think about it. You are there. Most of your customers are going to be there with their kids. You don't want your kids going into these bathrooms that look like Jean-Claude Van Damme kicked all the doors in and they're all dented and, they're dirty and the sinks don't work right. People remember that. Yeah. And then, most importantly, because I feel like, as FECs, we're selling an experience, right? We're in the business of fun. So I would almost venture to say, like, to sit there and think, like, how does just being in your facility, how does it make you feel? Does it get you excited to play the games? Does it get you excited to, bowl? Just does it make you feel like you're in this place? Like, people come to your facility to have fun, to forget about, everything else that's going on in their lives at the moment and just have sheer fun with friends. So like I said, just making sure that, your staff is, even welcoming people, making sure that your customer feels good coming into this facility, making sure that, everything is, attended properly, right?
Sure.
If you is it clean? Are your attendants where they're supposed to be? Does your redemption counter look great? Is your food service good? I mean, customer service is a crutch for, like, I think pretty much every company that's out there, right?
Yeah.
So the better you can be on how you treat your customers as well. And, just doing everything with a smile, right? And I love, one of our great friends in the industry, Mr. Wallace, likes to talk about, you could have the greatest experience. You go to leave the facility and one of the workers is standing at the door, just finger up their nose, picking their nose out.
That's the tone you're leaving with,
right?
For sure. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, and sometimes too, and you had mentioned, like, also not only walking your own, go out there and see. Sometimes it's easier to get a sense of what you want or don't want by seeing it elsewhere, because you can get the blinders on, you can do that. But like, you walk into a facility and they've got their merch decorated like chandeliers hanging from the ceilings over the redemption counter, and you're going, oh, that's awesome. Like, we should look at doing something like that. So sometimes R&D is not just research and development. Sometimes it can be rip off and duplicate a little bit when you get some ideas of just like, ooh, that created an emotional response from me that is a good thing. Like, I want to be able to also do that. And so it's just getting your eyes on other locations as well as your own and seeing, okay, what are they doing that we could do, better? What are we doing that is standing out, and all of that. So I love it.
Yeah, I mean, last but not least, it's just contrary to popular belief, everyone will say like, so, if I adjust my price lower, or because you're telling me I'll make more money, this way, or if I, offer more bonus sale, or, just whatever it might be. It might not just be in the arcade. There's always that question of like, well, if a mom comes in here intending to spend $20, how do I know that she's going to spend more than that $20? Well, she's certainly not spending more than that $20 if your games are broken, dilapidated, your facility's dirty, your staff is rude. Now, if you made her feel good, her kids are having a good time, and they find value in being there, and the experience is great, of course you're going to stay. Like, I mean, it's the same thing as...
Well, and are you offering value adds and upsell opportunities to allow them to even do that? Let's say the rest is just neutral. Like, if you've got a $20 package and, like, that's what everyone's doing, then you may even look at, hey, what are the starting recommended packages that we should also look at? Like, I mean, there's a ton that goes into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anybody, I hate to revert back to like casinos, right? But it's like, look at when you're sitting there, playing blackjack at a table and you're losing, but the whole table is having a blast. So you're like, I'm gonna stick it out a little longer, and maybe I'll lose an extra $100 just because I am genuinely having a awesome
good time. Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure. I love it. Well, with that, before I let you go for the day, and off to the final wedding nuptial plannings and everything else, and congrats again on that. Is there a book or a quote or a podcast or something that you've come across recently that has just spoken to you either as a personally or professionally that you'd like to share?
Well, I guess, there's two things that I hear frequently in this industry that I love, and they're good reminders. So one of the best things I ever heard, and you'll hear me say this a lot, is, one of our customers once upon a time said, the months I give the most away are the months I do the best business. And to not be afraid to give a little extra to get a little more. You give away a free game of laser tag, they're not showing up by themselves. They're going to bring in some additional paying customers for you. So don't be, like, you want people to come into your facility. So don't be shy to just give a little bit extra away. It costs you little to nothing to, give a free $5 game card to someone to get them to come on into your facility. So definitely, promote yourself, as much and as often as you can. Don't be afraid to give a couple things away here or there to entice others to come into your facility. And then last but not least, my favorite say is just to say, it's not a kidney in a cooler, right? We're not saving lives. So when you're running an arcade, we're being pulled in so many different directions, and it's stressful at times, but God, it's a hell of a lot of fun. But at the same time, it's important to remind ourselves that, like, we need to just relax, take it all in, and we'll get it done. We'll get it fulfilled. But it's hard to not get lost in the minutia, because as an FEC owner, you're running laser tag, arcade, redemption counters, restaurants, bars. I mean, I give all you FEC owners out there a heck of a lot of credit. So when push comes to shove, just remember to take that deep breath.
There you go. Just keep swimming, all you Finding Nemo fans out there. I love it.
Yep.
Well, with that is a great spot for us to wrap up. We've got more great content coming your way. Thank you again, Brittany, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. If you liked what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We always appreciate the 5 stars. Please and thank you. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, hit us up on our social media channels and submit those. And big shout out to Mikey Mike on the 1s and 2s working that Ultranet for us. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one, Troublemakers.